Welcome to the podcast. On wax.
Episode 2 of Rainbows on Wax. My name is Alex.
I'm Steve.
We're here to talk about music, life, love, why we love to make our lives full of music. This week, we are going to tackle the subject of live performance, I guess is the...
Yeah, live music today.
Playing gigs. Getting gigs.
In a country that's very hard to get gigs and book tours in at the moment.
It's tricky.
Yeah.
Some people are doing really well. Some people are not doing well.
Lots of venues closing down.
Yeah, the news of the Zoo.
Yep.
Sort of a recent one, a very amazing venue that I've played in a bunch of times.
Yep.
It was a real moment to sell out the Zoo or even just get a gig at the Zoo, regardless of like selling it out. But a real like poignant moment in any local band's career, Brisbane, Sunshine Coast, Queensland, to hit that venue and kind of do well, or at least do something there. So yeah, definitely sad news with that one. But I think, the gig culture has changed since we were younger. There's, even as we spoke about sort of in the last episode, growing up in Townsville, there just wasn't gigs. So I put them on with my mum and friends. Yeah. And, to the backstory there is, I think we might have done one before we did the Amity Affliction show, I believe. We may have done that. So, and that one, from what I remember, was we got some council funding. So it was like $1,000 or something like that. It was sort of like, we could guarantee the band $1,000, which back then, was a lot of money.
It's good money.
To come and play a show.
Kind of still is good money.
It still is really good money. Probably not for Amity Affliction.
No.
They probably don't.
For a local up and coming band though.
Yeah, exactly. And we had no idea really how many people were going to show up. Mum worked at the uni at the time, and she actually got access to printing really cheap black and white posters. She could print them really cheap. So we would glue up posters like everywhere around town. Thinking back to it now, it's like maybe not the most ideal thing to do, gluing posters to places, but it seemed to work. And anyway, there was a ripple kind of through the schools, and back then too, we would put on like maybe 5 support bands. To be fair,
that's a big show.
It's a big show.
Yeah,
but yeah, to be fair, like metal, punk, and things like that, it was generally like a 20-minute set. Like no one really played for longer than 20 minutes or half an hour max. I'm pretty sure Amity probably played for like 40 minutes, and I think they doubled up on songs back then. So yeah, it was still a really fun event. I believe the tickets were maybe like $10, $15, but I reckon like 450 kids kind of came out of the woodwork. And you are talking alternative music in not an alternative community. Townsville probably still is a bit more of like a military town, farming town, things like that. So kids like putting on skinny jeans from where did we buy them? We got them
JJ's.
Valley Girl.
Yeah,
it was girls jeans. It was like before JJ's were doing it. So we had to go to Valley Girl and buy skinny jeans, and you get your band t-shirts online from Punk Rock Tees or something like that.
Big fringes hanging over.
Big fringes, like studded belts. Loving all that stuff. In a really hot climate, wearing all black. So that was some of the first gigs putting on, but whether or not somebody else may have done it, potentially yes. But anyway, it ended up being me, my friends, and my mum being the responsible one for booking things out. Again, we may have just stumbled into this, but I know JCU let us do one up there at the uni bar, but then the PCYC would let us do it there as well. And the benefits of the PCYC was they were police run. So you got the police involved, and it
It was like free security.
basically,
Yeah.
free security, but then kind of keeping them on side as well. Because if you got 500 punk kids, like these are
Yeah.
can be kind of obnoxious kids sometimes.
Yeah.
Who can get up to mischief.
Lots of hormones.
Yeah, they're probably underage drinking and
Yeah.
things like that. But just having the police involved, like they were cool with it because then they could handle it. If there was an issue, they could look after it. And they were awesome people and awesome police officers. Like they were probably their kids were coming as well, you know. So that's like was my beginning of these things. Maybe I learned as well, as I said, my mum used to put on shows out the back of her restaurant Traders, which was in Coolum, which is all knocked down now. But if anyone knows Coolum, it would be roughly near where the Macca's is, kind of in behind there.
Right.
I think there's maybe a sushi place there or Ganda, the shops that kind of knocked down all the old stuff and put up that. Gone Bonkers obviously still there.
Yeah.
It's always has been there. But she would put on gigs with like the Tooth Fairies, Sub Freak, even Shannon Carroll's original band, which I know he's in Band of Frequencies now, but back then he played in Soul Prism, I believe. So and David Flower with The Feel. It was just the ones I can remember off the top of my head. I'm sure there was more, but they were, you know, the locals at the time, who were playing gigs. Woodford Folk Festival, I guess, is like our local festival up here. That was super popular. You know, it still is.
Still does quite well. Yes.
Yeah. I'd say genre-wise, like, and again too, like our crossovers too with the Yamanui, Paulie and those crew, they were kind of like the Brisbane crew, but like they all knew each other. All the Brisbane sort of, you know, I'd say this is like alternative, I guess, like it's sort of beachy. There's like reggae influences, dub,
funk.
Yeah, that was the sound back then. Percussionists, lots of percussion in all these bands, didge. The beginnings of what actually is kind of popular music now.
Yeah, it still is.
Yeah. So I do remember those shows and kind of growing up, you know, going to all those gigs and festivals from like 5-6 years old. So definitely loved all of those things. North Arm Hall was another one where there was some awesome gigs out there. Skip forward years and then we were doing it in Townsville. I guess the big difference I noticed was moving from Townsville to Brisbane, there was establishments like the Zoo. You know, these venues that put on gigs. There was other venues like the Lion's Den, I know, again, is shut down, but would sort of put on these metal shows. And until you could kind of sell out the arena, bigger venues that, you know, were specifically designed venues for shows. Princess Theatre was another one, which is, again, now the Princess Theatre, amazing venue. But back then it was just an empty room that you could play in.
Hire a PA and...
Hire a PA system, figure it out. And again, much more focused on alternative music, punk, emo, hardcore, metal, all those sorts of things that was happening everywhere in Australia and all around the world in the early 2000s to, you know, we started to see a few of them poke their heads up, like Amity Affliction, Parkway Drive, I Killed the Prom Queen. You know, even Bring Me the Horizon, I know is an English band, but I feel like got their start here in Australia, and they have a member of I Killed the Prom Queen in the band, I think still to this day. So seeing that was really, really cool. But again, we're talking, $10 gigs. You know, insurances were like maybe not a thing that we knew about. You know, it's expensive to insure a
alcohol tax was non-existent.
These were like all ages shows as well. Like often they were drug and alcohol free, so it was like venues weren't making money that way until you got to the bigger shows. So that was like my background on, I guess, starting shows before it was like, okay, now we're just going to go and book venues or play at venues that can handle what we're doing. Eventually, obviously, Mum ended up at the old museum and we did gigs there as well. But yeah, what was your sort of first incantations of...
It was in Townsville with one of my first bands, and we were very lucky because Townsville, like every pub and club is in one street,
Yep.
one area. So, the underground was hot. It was quite reciprocating, and being such a far away town from the capital cities, when a big touring app came through, the most active bands at the time would get a lot of those opportunities, and we were very lucky to be able to get those opportunities. And
Yeah.
like we opened for DZ Death Rays and the Rubens and Kingswood and
Yeah.
whoever came through, Smith Street Band, it was really like the opportunity felt, I don't want to say easy, but it was like it was either us or a band that had already played those shows, so, and yeah, it was a really, like, I'm so grateful to be able to be thrown in the deep end in that sense, So whenever those opportunities popped up, we were like, yeah, we'll have a go,
Yeah.
So it was really good. When I moved here, it was a bit a little bit more competition, but it was good because I moved south for more opportunities like this and more of the culture, and just to kind of see what else was out there. And the first band that I was in down here in southeast Queensland, we threw about like you did, we threw our own shows and house parties and
Yep.
our own little mini festival that was at a scouts camp.
Yeah.
And the Sunshine Coast is beautiful for its wide open spaces, and there's a lot of space to use in that sense, and people love that sort of thing. People will go out of their way to go and camp at an event like this. And it was awesome.
Yeah. And I guess that was one of the big things that kind of did come up in our music club a couple of weeks ago, or last week, sorry, when we opened up the floor to discuss sort of different gigs, how you sort of generate opportunities. And it really did sort of come down to, especially in the, let's say beginners, intermediate sort of area, it's like you either kind of create your own opportunities or you jump onto the other people's opportunities that are kind of happening. It's sort of one or the other. You don't really have the luxury of just sort of going to your booking agent and saying, hey, book me an East Coast tour. Book me an Australian tour, do a regional one, we'll do a city one, whatever it is. We know we're going to sell it out. You kind of have to create them, and those creations either come from you as an instigator or you are part of building a community that is creating these things, and you throw your hand up and say, hey, we're keen to play. How can we help? A funny thing that kind of was raised, I guess, because I've been in Brisbane for so long, been back on the coast now a year and a half, was the similarities between the gigs that my mum used to put on here and the gigs that you guys have been putting on up here, where, as you say, you get a piece of land, everyone can kind of camp out there, and
BYO,
and a curry. The
and
food,
curry,
right? Like putting on a curry. I think it's like this, almost like, established thing that is not really spoken about. But I remember, because Mum was a chef, even though she was helping put on all these gigs, she ran a restaurant. And the food was always this big thing. It was always done by locals. And whether, I know, she was a chef, like it was legit, but still, it was like everyone kind of jumping in the kitchen and helping out and cooking up a few different dishes. We're talking, for me, this is even 30 years ago, where they were making things that were gluten-free, vegan, all this stuff anyway, before it was like a trending thing to do. Just because you grow up with hippies, like they're all like that anyway. They've been doing it forever. So naturally, there's all this amazing healthy food, healthy options that are just delicious, yummy, warming food. That was also a bit of an income source. People are going to chuck $5 or $10 towards a feed, but everyone got fed regardless of money. Like, it was just like, if you can throw something their way, put it their way. Which you probably have to these days with the price of food, even potatoes and stuff. I thought that was such an awesome thing, and something that, I wonder if that happens
Yeah.
in other places around the world, around the country, where there's this, obviously we've got music and coming together.
Yeah.
The other thing that really brings people together is food, aside from alcohol, that's fine for those who want to partake. But yeah, I found that really fascinating that still exists 30 years after the fact, that we're still seeing this and doing this in this sort of grassroots level, before people are ready to make the jump and the risk to book venues and pay the fees that are associated with that, because it's a risk.
Yeah, and especially now, like, even like I saw a stat today. It was like 1,600 venues around Australia have closed their doors.
Yeah, wow.
And it's so crazy for the Australian music culture, because what do you do to book a tour? Like, how do you get on the road?
Yeah.
And, there's a few formulas out there that people are toying with and finding that are working for them, So Ziggy Alberts is a good example, because he spent a few years on the road playing all age shows, and they were free shows, and he would busk, and he built a solid fan base that way. And I still think that's a very good way to do things. But if you've already done that and you don't have 100,000 listeners on Spotify, for example, and you need to get on the road and book shows, the opportunities are much slimmer than they ever have been. And it's not just here in Australia. Like, the whole world is feeling this pinch in the music industry. So I'm very curious to see what happens next.
Yeah, it's also the best way to road test music. And I reckon almost every musician has been told this or heard this, but when you're road testing new music, your first music as well, or if you're established new music, it's a really great way to gauge if people are going to like it. Mm-hmm. And okay, fair enough. Like, how you go and then record a song, and then the reception that it has through a recorded outlet, Spotify, etc., may be completely different, but that doesn't matter, because as we know, a lot of musicians make most of their money, or should make most of their money, from live performance. Mm-hmm. So if you've got good songs that do well live, you're going to keep playing gigs and getting bigger and better gigs. And again, the whole ego thing sort of comes up as well. It's like, songs that aren't working, maybe they're just not good enough. Maybe the song is just straight up a song that you might like and your crowd doesn't like, and you'll get quite a quick response by whether people just start talking while you're playing, or and again, if they like it, maybe they'll shut up and start looking, and
it's instant feedback.
How loud they clap. There's plenty of artists that we've seen, especially these days, that have gone from busking to a big career because they get this like feedback straight away, that they can see what really works and what doesn't. And bands, and artists should take that on board and look at that and go, like, drop your ego and go, is this song good enough? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. You'll get a good response that way. Another thing that came from the music club too was the house shows, which, again, I kind of took from Corby. I know after he did Australian Idol, he really wanted to reinvent himself as not just being an Australian Idol artist. So he did these backyard shows, which I know, whether or not, punk bands have been doing it forever. People have been doing this concept for a long time, but he really went all out, did maybe 80 shows, a lot of shows. It was a lot. Anyway, I told this story to the music club and encouraged them, if you've got the time and the energy, you should go and play backyards and houses, and Brook Street did. And they killed it. They played all over the country. They sold out most of their gigs, from what I understand, and really low risk, like, if you end up just playing for the people that live there and have a curry, good on you.
Well, that's discovering true fans as well. Like, you're building fans that are going to follow you forever that way. And it's always community driven as well. Like, going back to what we were talking about earlier with, having a ticket price that could include a meal or camping for the night, giving people incentive to stick around and just stay and enjoy it.
Yeah.
And I think that's what venues need to rethink. Like in Australia, we have these crazy alcohol taxes right now, and it stemmed from a lot of things. Before COVID, Sydney got the lockout laws, and Sydney, they lost 1/3 of their venues in that moment. COVID hit, that doubled.
Yeah.
So, to me, I don't even think of Sydney as a place to tour now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, Sydney is our biggest city in this country.
That's right.
We don't even think of that as a place to go and tour.
Yeah.
Like, that is...
Yeah,
that's
until you're hitting
worrying
significant numbers.
Yeah.
It's hard. Yeah, and that's right. And sort of like, what is the alternative scene in Sydney, and where are these kind of underground gigs happening? Again, too, like, I don't know. Like it seems so foreign to me. And sometimes I can live in my bubble up here on the coast now. And, after losing the zoo, it's sort of like, what is that small venue that you can play in Brisbane that isn't tiny? I know there's some really great, very intimate venues there. But that sort of next jump up before you hit, the Princess Theatre, which is at the moment, I think around 800-900 capacity, which is quite big and expensive for a lot of bands. Some bands wouldn't blink at the price, but some it's too expensive.
But not even just expensive for the band; it's expensive for the patron to go out now.
Yeah,
like I kind of put the word out today on Instagram, just asking a bunch of people like, why do you buy a ticket? Why don't you buy a ticket?
Oh, yeah, do you have that?
I do have a few.
Let's get some honest feedback.
Some honest feedback
from they can remain anonymous. But I'm fascinated to know. So what was the question that you posed to the...
So the question was, what makes you buy a ticket to a show, and why wouldn't you buy a ticket to a show, even if you did want to see this artist?
Yeah.
And it was like, there was a lot of similarities in the responses, but let's have a look here. They'll pay for an artist they want to see.
Yep.
Unless it's really expensive, then they won't. What adds to the expense is ticket prices, travel to and from the location,
whether they need accommodation,
those sorts of things. That was a very common one. People are saying there's way too much distraction online.
Oh yeah. What do they mean by that?
So through COVID, people were kind of forced to stay indoors, right?
Yeah.
So they were consuming what was in front of them.
Oh, they got their Netflix.
The streaming.
Online gaming.
I'm a sucker
for,
right? All of those sorts of things that kind of changed the habit.
Yeah, changed the weekend habit, the evening habit.
Exactly right. So...
so instead of kind of actively going what are we doing this weekend?
Yeah.
What's happening Friday? What's happening Saturday? Where are we going? What's the venue?
It's a whole different social structure. Yeah. Right.
So maybe they're like, we're just going out for dinner earlier and then we're going home and we're going to watch our show.
The process of purchasing tickets is just...
annoying,
clunky. Price, location. If you live closer to a bigger city, it's a lot easier to travel to and from.
Yeah.
So kind of similar.
Which obviously we struggle with a bit on the Sunshine Coast is, I know that all the feedback kind of does say our public transport isn't that bad. Yeah. People just don't use it.
Yeah. I've got a lot of South American friends here, and they're like, we've never owned a car before until we moved to the Sunshine Coast.
Yeah.
You need a car to get around here.
The statistic, I think, is pretty alarming that I think we have the most cars per capita in the country.
Wow.
Yeah. So I went to the study, I don't know who did it. I forgot. Anyway, the university did looking into the Sunshine Coast nightlife.
Actually, I was going to get this thing from Larissa today. She was going to send it to me. She's like, actually, I got to get it back to you. But
yeah. Larissa was there. Obviously Andy from the uni.
Yeah.
Chris as well, who's my boss here at the station, which is a big venue on the Sunshine Coast that's trying to, establish itself as the major spot here.
Mm-hmm.
The tricky thing with the station is that it's a big room, the main room,
Mm-hmm.
amazing production, lights, sound, great capacity, but you really need to be a band that can fill it.
Yeah.
And they're starting to come, like the calendar is starting to fill up. Shows are selling.
Mm-hmm.
The ones that people want to see are selling, 660 sold out.
Yeah.
Kiwi band, there's obviously a lot of Kiwis up here that just love it and would do anything to come and see that show.
Yeah.
Some gigs that are really surprising me, but then there's this local culture that's hard to tap into. There is free music here. There is food. It's not free. There is relatively reasonably priced alcohol. But again, the few things that are big here is like the lack of public transport, perhaps.
Mm-hmm.
And then the rain,
weather dependent venues.
Yeah, weather dependent venues. So, if it, and as we know, we've been basically in a rain cloud since December.
Yeah.
Maybe prior.
Yeah.
Every nice day seems to be like a Monday or something like that, not a weekend.
And it's a day for 6 hours.
Yeah, for working. Which is fine, but yeah. So sort of like venues are kind of then also having to have all these major expenses to like waterproof venues or because again it's like, yeah, cool, like you can go to a waterproof small venue or a small bar. Most of our pubs and clubs up here are kind of pokey driven RSLs, surf clubs, which don't have the most amazing vibe. The people is what make the vibe, and the people are awesome. Bluff Bar, which just goes crazy in Alex. But again, it's like what makes that venue is its proximity to the water, where you can see the water, which is just so rare on the Sunshine Coast. To have a venue that you can look at the beach,
And watch a band at.
So much beach. But again, it's like a weird space, it's like their function room.
Yeah.
It's not, like the Metro Theatre or like the Corner Hotel or like these places.
It's not a
in
live
Sydney.
music venue.
No.
Full stop, right?
No.
It's not all ages, but it's a family orientated pub, right?
Yeah. And it's got white walls and umbrellas and it's what it is. But yeah, I guess building that culture, building the offering is sort of the big thing, and just, showing people what can happen. Yeah. Again, working here at the station, obviously there's some big shows here. Amazing to be a part of those. But, a big focus for me too is like local independent music and how we can sort of build that culture. And I think too, it is like, it's the offering and it's the trendiness these days too.
Yes. I think COVID really destroyed socializing. Right?
Yeah.
Everywhere in the world. So forming, we need to form a habit again about going out and seeing a band live.
Yeah.
Experiencing the ticket price, right? Experiencing what you get within that ticket, and trying to rethink what venues could do, because you said before it was like there's a lot of costs outlaid. Like it's not, the negotiation for a band to play at a venue on a tour, right, was usually band takes tickets, venue takes the bar.
Yeah.
The price of alcohol now, it's just not selling beer. It's not selling alcohol.
Yeah.
Right? People are pre-drinking and then coming to the gig shit-faced.
Yeah, having
right?
one or two beers.
One or two beers, and the venue, or they'll do a bunch of pre-sales and they'll cater for 500 when only 350 to 400 show up.
Yeah.
Then they're completely overstaffed. So venues are struggling because how do they get on top,
Yeah, struggling for start. Even the other night we had maybe 900 here for a gig, the Never Ending 80s, which is a covers thing. Fair enough. But they're really entertaining. It's like a theatre show, to be honest. Like they put on this great gig playing all your favourite hits from 80s, 90s, and really great performers. But 900 people. And the big thing I noticed was like everyone kind of hit the bar at the same time. So then there's lines for the bar. And they sort of want to just get in, grab a few drinks, and then go, and then it's, watch the show, obviously. But there's not this kind of steadiness happening. It's sort of like they get smashed. Maybe the big lines would deter some people, so then drink sales are down. But it's like, what do you do? Do you add another 4 staff on at $36 an hour on the off chance that you could have this, and it's only maybe an hour or an hour and a half where you've got this really overwhelming amount of people wanting a drink. But you know, it's minimum 3 hours to book these people. It's like, how do you kind of weigh it up, especially for a new venue where the statistics aren't there yet? You can't sort of go and look in your computers and look at your sales and see,
adjust accordingly. Yeah.
So my big thing is always like jumping in and helping, and
Yeah.
you know, again too, like getting wristbands on people as they're coming in the door. Like, we don't want to employ 6 people
Yeah.
to like put wristbands on at the door, but
Yeah.
also everyone kind of shows up at the same time. So you've got 900 people wanting to check a ticket and get a wristband. And so, you know, here everyone just jumps in. We just jump in and start wristbanding people. And that was the culture I always grew up with.
Yeah.
But not everyone's sort of about that. It is kind of about, there's no bosses, like everyone's in the trenches together. And that's what's going to make a venue succeed.
Yeah.
And just building the culture and explaining that to people. And
Yeah. Incentivizing them to stay longer as well.
come earlier.
Another thing was like, there's a Perth venue, I forgot the name of it, but they're on the brink of shutting down because people will only go for the show and then they'll leave, right?
Yep.
They're not spending any money while they're there.
Yeah.
They'll go and have dinner somewhere else. They'll go and pre-drink somewhere else. And then they'll go out after the show's finished. Or they'll only go and see the main artist.
Yeah.
So it's a double-edged sword, really.
Yeah.
You know, it's something that I think venues really need to be creative with. Like, do they charge an extra 10 or 15 or $20 in the ticket price and give them a feed like we would have done at a home show, right?
Yeah.
Do they do that? Or do they get, like the big casinos do over in the States, and have bar staff walk around with the alcohol and be like, you know, beers,
Yeah.
you know, it's a bit dangerous, but like thinking outside the box a little bit, because we're losing all our venues. Where are we going to tour?
That's right. And from that, you know, the real victim here is like quality musicians, quality acts that have had these places to grow, to learn, to get better at what they're doing. You know, there is this massive ripple effect, obviously in the hospitality industry, but in the music industry too, which I know is like, you know, there's some amazing stats out there. I'm sure that it employs a lot of people, and I'm sure that it does. But there's very select few things that happen, like especially when it comes to production. You can't have thousands of producers. It's just not going to be a thing. You have thousands of like self-produced people. That's fair enough. But, you know, there's a few of these jobs available in whole cities and whole countries. But they're really important roles. Like they're what give us big exports of artists overseas that that sell out these venues and keep them going. And the more that we can have of them and the quality, that's when people are willing to hand over the $60, $80, $100, whatever it is for a gig.
One of the things of feedback I got was people will pay for a quality show, a quality artist, a touring act that they, you know, it's almost out of reach for them to see. Like they'll go out of their way to go and see that artist. They'll book the Airbnb. They'll, you know, they'll do the Uber rides. Yeah. Another thing was in the UK, like the UK is feeling this too. They've just initiated a thing where the major events, so say if it's a big stadium show, the Chili Peppers play, for example, $1 of every ticket goes back into the city infrastructure. So it goes into the smaller venues. It goes back.
Oh, that's a good idea.
So things like that, you know, I think where that could really spark a little more, you know, motivation to keep them going. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
Which we are yet to maybe have on the Sunshine Coast, our stadium shows.
Yeah, we just lost Caloundra Music Festival, which was...
lost Caloundra Music Festival. Horizon's not coming till next year. Groove in the Moo we lost.
Splendor's gone.
Splendor's gone. These big major
Yet
festivals.
All of these big major festivals, especially like Listen Out, Splendor,
Yeah.
you know, they all got massive government money. Like they
Yeah.
got 100, 200K each to push them forward. But where did that money go?
Yeah.
You know, same with the Sunshine Coast Council. Like they call it Arts Fund, but where's the funding going?
Yeah, it's not. I mean, it may be transparent. I haven't really looked into it.
Yeah.
I know that I'm going to meet with councillors to push to have a smaller festival done here at the station,
Yeah.
where it looks like we can maybe have around 3,000 people.
See, this is a prime spot for something like that, I think.
Yeah, well, it can be cheaper. We can do less headliners.
Yeah.
We can do a big stage outside. But our big thing here is because we have a room that sort of fits around 1,600 and then an outdoor area that could probably do 3,000.
Mm-hmm.
We can only sell 3,000 tickets. We can't sell 4,000 because we can't have 1,000 people missing out
Mm-hmm.
on seeing one of the bands.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to consider all these things when it comes to a festival as well, because we may only have 2 major headliners
Yeah.
and then some, you know, mid-level bands and local bands.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, how annoyed would people be if they spent $100 and we're like, no, that room's filled.
Mm-hmm.
You can't get in there.
Mm-hmm.
So there's all these things to
Which
be
is
considered.
it does happen at the bigger festivals too. Like when a tent is full, like you're trying to see the band and there's no way.
There's no way, but you can, I guess
You
they
can
get
hear
away
it, I
with
guess, but
yeah. So that's sort of the trick. I'm hoping council will kind of come in and at least help us here at the station do those kinds of things, because if they're not funding hundreds of thousands, potentially millions for things like Caloundra Music Festival, perhaps there is budget in the low $100,000 mark, you know, which is probably all that might be needed for doing these kind of festivals to keep the ticket price at a reasonable price. Look at building an infrastructure and getting to and from these venues safely for people coming from, you know, Caloundra and Maroochydore.
That's a great point. Like could the government fund the public transport side of it?
Yeah.
So there is money going, like, so the festival itself can actually profit in some way.
Yeah.
Or, you know, could they minimize the alcohol tax a little bit to keep people around a bit longer so the venues can actually make a bit money?
Yeah.
You know, lots of things.
Noise restrictions, I think, is another one.
Noise restrictions, exactly.
Yeah, having subs outside, and there's all sorts of things that, you know, is just stacking the odds against people wanting to have live entertainment. Because I think a majority of people, you're right, want to stay home and watch telly, and that's how they want to live their lives. Mm-hmm. People can live their lives however the hell they want to, but, you know, boring to not get out there and be a part of culture. Or just doing the same old, supporting the same, you know, bullshit culture that we've all been sort of sucked into outside of, you know, stimulating young music, you know, live music that makes people want to move here and live here and makes your houses that you all own worth more, because the Sydney people want to come up and go, oh yeah, we'll happily live on the sunny coast, there's enough to do, and they'll spend their Sydney money up here and buying property, and, you know, it'll affect the pocket of all those people that want to make their money through those awful ways, you know, and jacking up the prices of everything around these communities. Obviously, the beach is a big pull for most people, where they want to live in the vicinity of walking or short drive to the beach. But I'd say a venue or some amazing restaurants, cafes, that sort of cultural thing would be pretty close second to what you want to live near. Yeah. Aside from schools. Yeah.
The other thing, like with all of these new tools and people spending so much time online, like how can we bridge the gap, right?
Yeah.
So a venue like this, where it's got a great production system, right? Could you, as part of the ticket price, you know, maybe it's an extra $5 or $10, but for every ticket holder, the event gets filmed and recorded, and then the ticket holder receives that recording.
Oh yeah.
So it's like they don't only get to experience it once, but they can experience it again.
Yeah.
And in the NFT world, people are reselling those experiences.
Yeah.
For example.
Yeah.
So, You know, like trying to think of how can you really squeeze the most juice out of the fruit.
Yeah, build the offering.
Build the offering.
Yeah, that's right. I think it's the only real way forward, and big shows are going to sell, you know, and I think people understand that. There's a lot of artists that are just going to sell out shows at almost any price. I'm sure those Billie Eilish shows are all sold out at, you know, probably $250 a ticket.
Yeah.
Pretty sure. You know, and it's just her and a support act, you know.
And a backing track.
Yeah. Just doing her thing.
Yeah.
You know, but again, and it's like coming back down to a $10 gig. And so you can go to 25 of them. So it's one every 2 weeks in a whole year that you could go to local bands for the same money and have 25 awesome experiences in your life with all your mates, maybe making new friends, maybe meeting the love of your life, you know, those sorts of things that could be.
This is why we all went out back in the day, right?
Yeah, that's right.
It's like to meet people, to
exactly
socialize, to rub shoulders, to...
Yeah, watch it just benefit your life. Watch it probably extend your life, you know, just getting out and being amongst it all. But yeah, you're right. Like the offering needs to be there. The quality of bands need to be there. And that's sort of the side, I guess, that we like to help with is helping young artists realize their best songs, record their best songs, communicate their best songs, become obsessed with music to be something that is like worthwhile. And people sort of showing up to these gigs and just being like, yes, it was freaking awesome, and like can't wait to see them again.
Something that was super inspiring to see for me, and I know many other people were inspired by this, was Bobby Alu's recent tour.
Oh, yeah.
It was the breakfast tour. He played cafes at 8 a.m. in the morning, right? 50 shows around the country.
Yeah.
3 cafes a day. All age shows, free for everyone. And then he had his manager walking around saying, scan the QR code to pre-order the album.
Yeah.
Spotify went crazy.
Yeah.
Like that was a very doable formula for anyone. Like, doesn't matter if you're in a band or not. Like,
no, doesn't matter what level you're at. You got a few good songs.
Yeah.
You just get out there. Cafes would love it. If you're the right kind of vibe. Obviously, you know, some of this stuff is genre dependent. You know,
100%.
If you're a metal band, it's probably not going to work if you got all sorts of stuff going on. But if you're a soloist,
screaming over coffee.
Yeah, maybe not. There's other avenues for that anyway. That scene is still, you know, pretty amazing when you can tap into the bones of it all.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you're a folk artist, country artist, rock artist, whatever, and you can play an acoustic guitar on your own or in a duo, get in the car and just like pull your finger out and go and do it.
Even beat makers and stuff like that. Like you can do that, you know.
Yeah.
But then like for the heavier acts or for the more, you know, nonchalant acts, you know, house parties. Yeah. You know, find your following that way.
Yep.
And incorporate a lot into the ticket. Like if you can give a little more and not cut yourself short, you know, I think
that's what makes people, I think, want to go. If they're like, oh, this band's playing again. Yeah, but this week they got this like epic curry that they're putting on and like they've done a bowl of sangria that you pitch in for or something. Like that's a thing that people want to post on their Instagram or whatever, and like I got the curry at this event. That was the only one it existed at. They get to feel unique for a minute. You know, so much of life these days is like put out through social media, and I don't blame people. You know, like it's exciting to share your life that way and to get acknowledged. But again, these gig offerings have to think a little bit outside the square and put something on, and the culture will just grow. Yeah, because as soon as more and more people start doing these things, they'll want to keep going. And they might not go every week or every fortnight, but they might go once a month, and then it just grows. It grows because they tell their friends, "Oh, we had the best time. You guys all got to come next time to this gig. Like it's just going to be that fun. Yeah, trust me. You know, food was awesome, band was great." Had a good time, bang, and they're like, yeah, sweet, we'll go.
And if you can offer something exclusive, like Bobby's breakfast tour, he's got the breakfast tour t-shirt, right?
Oh yeah,
for example, with all the tour dates and stuff. So people that go to these shows would want to collect that shirt. Yeah, you know, it probably wouldn't be available online. You won't find it at the bigger tour, you know. Yeah, Like a lot of bands do that. You know, I think I've got a Rolling Stone shirt from a specific tour as well. Like
Yeah.
it's those collectible items.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah, just trying to.
A question we want to put out to the whole world, whoever's listening to this, like send in your like unique things that make unique shows. If there's any like advice you can give to, you know, local artists, you know, putting on a show, share your stories of what's going on in your town that makes it amazing and that you're noticing a difference. You know, is it the show? Is it the offerings at the show? Is it the curry at the show? Is it the bands? Is it the style of music? Like, what are the things that are making it, you know, become at least successful? And success in my mind is kind of breaking even on a show.
Yeah.
Like, if you're not losing money on a show or not losing much, like you're having a good time, like that's a successful show.
Yeah.
You know, shows that want to profit lots of money, that's a different business. It's a different conversation.
Yeah.
You know, it's a different crew that are operating those sorts of things, amazing at what they do and amazing that they can do it because it can be done. But this is the beginning. You know, what's the stuff that's just sort of having a good time, 50 people, 100 people, 200 people, I'd say maybe 450. That's kind of the show, I'd say, where if you're selling more than 450 tickets, like you should be like doing pretty well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Leave a comment.
Yeah.
Leave a comment.
Like and subscribe.
Like and subscribe. All right.
Cool. Well, is that the end of episode 2?
That's the end of episode 2.
We'll stick around for the next one. We don't know what the next topic's going to be for episode 3. But if anyone has been interested, wants us to talk about anything, tackle any particular issues, Sunshine Coast or otherwise, leave a comment.
Yeah.
Thanks
Thank
again.
you, guys.
Rainbows.